Hello and welcome to Voices from the Mausoleum. I am once again joined by author Squall Charlson.
I made the intro. I just noticed it this time. I'm in the bottom.
Yeah. So we're here to talk spoilers for Terror Valley. You're Not My Sensei. If you haven't checked it out, we had a non-spoiler discussion last week. Spoiler, we filmed back to back, hence we're wearing the same clothes.
I've just been wearing this all week, so each their own.
You're reeking a little like Chuck.
Yeah. My body odor is not as bad today.
And still rocking the headband.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You're going to have some merch to go along with the book. You might have to get some Terror Valley headbands.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be cool. Or like something t-shirt wise. Trying to think of like, I should make a Camp Blood t-shirt. Like it's like in universe.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite things. Like when you said, like when you buy a shirt that's like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and it's got like the huge like all rights reserved logo on it, I'm like, ah. But if it's like the pizza joint that they're always eating at or something, like something super subtle in universe, I am there. I will buy that shirt. But
absolutely. No, yeah, like a camp counselor shirt or something would be really cool.
mm-hmm.
Trying to think of something for each of the
It could be Camp Blood, like the title of the one in the next book, and then on the back it says like crew member or like crew. So it's like, oh I was on set, I got this shirt. And it could be white with like a little blood across it or something. Like you've been through some shit.
Listen, we got some good ideas here at Voices from the Mausoleum. So.
Yeah. You guys need a marketing job?
I can ask my husband. He's the marketer that I know. So spoilers. So yeah, warning, spoilers, all that good stuff. You had a week from the last video to read. You're Not My Sensei, so you have been warned.
We are going to spoil things, as the name would suggest. Oh man.
So where should we start?
That's up to you. What do you want to talk about? Like, we could start at the end. We could start in the middle. We could go at the beginning.
So with Remy entering this new town, this new school, sort of this fish out of water, like we were saying, kind of this, what was that sort of I guess you tell me, the crux of her character, right? Is that what you were going for, since that's sort of what I picked up? Or
yeah, I mean, I really wanted Remy to go through it in a sense of, you go through it and then you come out a different person at the end. Mm-hmm. And I think if you can go through it and come out the same person but stronger, you did it better. And that's kind of what I wanted to touch on with Remy, of going through this. And I kind of allude to that, which was really funny because I didn't plan it. It was just sort of like, as I was writing it, the very first scene happens in her front yard, her new front yard, where she's taking her practicing out on this walnut tree.
Yeah.
And I sort of tie that into the ending, which is very much like the mindset of like, you do something over and over repetitive, you get better at it, you practice it. And you're able to kind of like, overcome and reach the next level for like, a game term. So that's kind of what I wanted to see in this story, was take a character and push them through all this to have them go back to their fundamentals and who they are and what they learned, and have that be the thing that leads them through and, ends up saving the day.
Something that was very relatable with Remy, at least to me, is this idea of having this thing that you're passionate about and then sort of losing your way with it a little bit. For her, it was because she moved, and there might not have been a nearby dojo, whatever it is, but it's sort of like, but it's always sort of a part of her.
Mm-hmm. I experienced that when I was growing up, like with sports. that you could be really good at a sport one year and then everybody else sort of catches up to you. Like for me personally, I was always a little bit of ahead of the curve. So like I'd be playing baseball
Mhm.
or soccer, and I was always like one of the better players that were out there on my team. And about the time I got to middle school, everybody had kind of caught up. Everybody had kind of, gotten better, and it was really aggressive. And like I was playing baseball and I would almost just like jump out in front of the ball because these kids would try to throw it as fast and as hard as they could. And it was just like wildly impossible to actually play the game because everybody's got such bent up, anger and frustration, and like they want to be the best. And that's kind of a fun thing that I got to write with like Chuck, that you get to see Chuck kind of go through his, athletic renaissance of
Mhm.
kind of finding himself and finding something he likes, even if it's not inherently him doing it. He still
Yeah.
understands to a core that he's good at something now. That people actually like respect him, even though it's more like they fear him when everything kind of gets shaken out. And I think that was a good thing to touch on with Remy is just I think we all kind of get there. Yeah, you really have a passion for something, and then you, I don't know, experience a setback, or you just kind of realize that maybe I want to do something else. Maybe it's not cut out for me. And
Yeah.
sometimes you move on to something else. Sometimes you double down and you're like, no, I am really good at baseball. I'm going to get this one extra, muscle through. Or you just go to
Yeah.
football like I did.
Uh,
Much more.
or switch gears, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chuck's a sweet character. Now you mention him too, right? He's sort of this like, this sort of like can go on forever. He gets picked on. Certainly like wanting to stand up for himself a little bit, and it's something that Remy can certainly do for So you have this kind of dichotomy with the two characters, and we see this in some like karate stories. Funny enough, I was thinking because I mentioned Power Rangers in the first episode, but I know that's something that we have in common is sort of that love for it. But I always think of like I think it's in the pilot episode of Power Rangers, Day of the Dumpster, where Bulk and
Like
Skull are
Billy,
like we just
Jason.
had to beat up people or something, and it's like that's not what it's about. But then you have Billy also really wanting to try, so you have like these kind of two dichotomies, and it's just sort of really sweet to see. I mean, sure, Chuck sort of gets lost in it, right? I mean, really, when we enter this kind of supernatural, the supernatural aspect of the story, they were confronted by these like solar strike kids, and they decide to go to the dojo and sort of investigate. There's like this investigation component, and Chuck is pretty like right away sucked into it. It's you
Right.
almost sort of, I don't know if this was intentional. You sort of wrote a little bit of a cult story as well here.
Yeah, like I said in the last talk we did about the last book, I was gonna make a title called "Cult of the Lunch Ladies," and so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I definitely had that in the back of my mind that this is more something that you become part of, like they choose you,
Mm-hmm.
and they definitely did not want Chuck, but in order to get Remy, they thought maybe we could go through and get Chuck. And I think you'll find that in a lot of those cases of like they are targeting one specific person or one specific party,
Yeah.
and will just kind of do whatever they can to allure them in. And no, it was a lot of fun to just kind of like play around with what I could have them do to Chuck, and kind of the glamorization of seeing, someone like Remy just lay out the school's biggest bully in one kick. I
Yeah.
want to do that. That sounds awesome. Like sign me up. Let's go. Are they gonna have to make me run? Like,
Uh,
yeah,
I have to
really,
run.
right?
I like that. I remember that
Yeah,
conversation and reading it. That was very funny.
yeah,
But it's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, yeah, going in with like the cult thing, right? Cults typically sort of like go after your supports, right?
mhm,
So it's like we use Chuck to get to her, and then eventually they go to they get the dad to get to her as well. So it's sort of doing that kind of cult mentality of like, all right, we're gonna just knock off all the people that you need for support, right?
right,
But this whole idea of like this dojo offers this kind of quick solution,
right,
right? Like you wear this headband and you are this karate master who can kick butt.
right. It's such a there are moments in the book where, and this happens as soon as Remy goes into the dojo, she starts hearing and seeing things from the rest on out,
Hmm.
because I believe that no matter what kind of sport you do, even like creatives, have this sort of vibe
Hmm.
that they give off, that when you get really into something or you're really passionate about something and other like-minded people are around you, you kind of begin to sort of understand them a little bit better, almost like supernaturally, not to the extent of this book where like, she's hearing things in her head, but I played with that idea that the headband is the ultimate conduit between
Hmm.
sensei and pupil. And in a lot of ways it can be, it symbolizes solar strike karate, it symbolizes himself as the sensei, and just sort of the process of pupil from master. And so I like to play that. And then by the end of it, we kind of get Sensei Roberts into the mix, which was a fun little twist I had in there. Um, and I like to play that both, like where she kind of like is balancing it, and
Yeah. Well,
I think
could you dive into a little bit of like, because there's a history there, right, between Sensei Roberts and the Sensei of Solar Strike, right? Was that something that you sort of intended to dive into originally, or did that sort of happen like, oh, wait, I could sort of connect this in some way? And
honestly, I did not plan that at all. I was going to have her sensei come in at some point and then sort of built upon that and kind
Mhm,
of kept coming back to it. So in the story, she reaches out to her sensei after she gets expelled and kind of fully unloads of what's going on. And that in turn leads Sensei to come to her rescue. And when I got to those two characters, Remy and Sensei Roberts, at the dojo, which is what it was all kind of like leading up to, like on my lists, like that's where I needed to get all the characters to. I needed to resolve everything before they go in there.
mhm.
I had no idea that that was her sensei until I was writing it, and it just kind of came out naturally, and I just really liked that idea of, I don't know if you got it while reading it, but all the kids, all the students wouldn't just be like 30 kids that just up and disappeared, like last week or over the last month, but like over years and decades. And all these, missing kids from this town have kind of accumulated over the years, kind
Yeah.
of drawing onto that allure, that mystery of who these headband kids are, because they're kind of ghostly, they're kind of scary. Um, and that Sensei Roberts could have been part of that fold. Like she followed Remy's path in a similar way, and is, who knows how many others have escaped like her, if any had. And so I was just like, I kind of got to that part and I was like, "Ooh, this is really fun." I could really go into it and explain it, but I think it's better to just kind of like leave it up to the reader to kind of
Yeah.
what exactly happened there, because I want to keep it Remy's story and I don't want it to become Sensei Robert's story. And so just kind of leaving it at that, I thought
Maybe
was.
part two could be Robert's prequel.
Well, we did talk about part 2 in the last conversation in last week's episode.
Yeah.
So, do you know who part 2 would be centered on?
So if it's not like a Roberts prequel story, it could be Chuck, right?
Yeah, it's
Probably
Chuck.
Chuck, right? Is there more to, I mean, the grandmother's house?
Mhm.
I feel like there's something that could be more there, right? I mean, I don't know if I don't think there was anything particularly supernatural about the grandmother's house if I'm remembering. Um, but there's like history and stuff that you could probably really dive into with Chuck, and where does he pick up the pieces from there? I like that's sort of your natural, because you sort of made it akin to like Haunted Mask 1 and 2,
Mhm.
right? So the main character in 2, I believe, was the bully in 1.
I think actually the character in 2 is named Chuck. Now that
That's
I'm
funny.
thinking about it, which is really funny. Yeah, he's one of the 2 bullies that always bullies Carly Beth, and
R-
he ends up next Halloween following her ordeal with one of those masks.
Right. So I feel like kind of akin to that, this could sort of be the what happens to Chuck after, and is there something similar, or because so the plan at the end is to dismantle the building, right? The dad wants to knock it down and build the school there, right?
Right. Because the school's crumbling, I made extra detail to make sure that you know that this school is falling down. And there's so many schools out there that need that sort of, rehabilitation, that sort of improvement.
Yeah.
And yeah, you get it in like the really rich neighborhoods that don't need it because their school's only 3 years old. But like some of these other ones, are just falling down in areas of like Kansas City. Even I drive by. I used to work in schools with elementary like kids, and I'd go from one program was every 2 weeks. I'd go from one school that like looks like it's out of iCarly or like one of those like Nickelodeon sets. Like it doesn't look real. Like it looks fake. It's crazy how much money went into that school. And then you go into one where they can't heat the hallways.
Yeah.
Because it costs too much money. And so they have space heaters in each of the rooms because it's winter,
There's 20-year-old textbooks, right? Like stuff like that.
They don't even have a library. Like really sad stuff like that. And that's unfortunately like a true horror of, our country and of right now. And so I like the idea of kind of taking that and sort of building up something that they absolutely need, like someone that is a good person kind of gets rewarded. And that's, Principal Cope, like she gets the new school. She kind of hints at it early on, which I went through and I revised it to kind of add more to make that ending kind of more, at the there. But that's kind of where I want to follow with the sequel is I want Chuck to sort of become that popular kid and kind of come into his own and sort of balance out like, yeah, I took care of that. And people, agreeing with it and kind of thinking, oh, that's cool until they start thinking you're still you, like you're not cool. Yeah. And what happens when he goes down into the basement of the new school and finds a relic of the dojo? That's all.
Starts a fight club.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. That's my guess. You don't have to reveal what your plans are.
Maybe after we're done recording, I'll lay it out there.
Yeah. You'll fill me in. I get the insider scoop, but I'm not a scooper, so there won't be any leaks. We're used to leaks these days.
And if it comes out, I know who to go back to. Yep.
This ass. No.
It came out of the mausoleum, those bastards.
Oh, no.
No.
Please. Anyway, I was going to mention a recent leak, but I don't even want to go there.
No. That's only like a small scope of...
Yeah, well, we follow similar. But anyway. Totally lost train of thought. But anywho, I mean, so I think, so something I really want to dive into is this, because I do like that you sort of leave it up to the reader's imagination on sort of what exactly, all right, so, Robert's past, sort of imagine what might have went down, how she escaped. As far as the entities themselves, right? I mentioned this in the first part. I love the oozy gooey goodness of some of these, right? They're oozing this black ick, like coming out. It's like pooling on the bathroom floor. It's sort of like, in your mind, sort of what's behind these entities and what's sort of did you base it on anything? Was it sort of a Squall creation?
I mean, you kind of alluded to like Evil Dead, and like as soon as you said that, I can see like the connection there. But I really wanted these things to sort of be like an extension. Think of like a ghost, right? So if a place is haunted, you can step outside and that thing is probably just trapped inside the house.
Right.
Now, what if a ghost had enough power to possess other people or other ghosts that were able to kind of go off and do its bidding? And that's kind of the idea behind it, is these kids that it sort of ensnared into this karate trap are able to, all be connected as one through him. And I just think that the scene in particular, the one on the cover as the main guy's crashing through the door of her bathroom, I just wanted to make it creepy. I was just like, what could they do that would really like upset someone?
Yeah.
And so they start like mimicking her, like they start screeching like her. They open their mouth and it's just like, yeah, it's very Sam Raimi-esque of, like it's just unhinged And I think
Yeah.
that's really all that there is to it. Like, I could come up with some other BS answer, but I just really like the visual of, like,
Yeah.
those doors are so crappy that,
Mhm.
like, they have, like, the hollow bits in it that I could just, like, imagine, like, all this gunk from this kid's mouth just, like, getting inside of it and it just being, like, really gross. Like, I don't know.
No, I love it, and I think right, a horror is sort of best when you don't know everything, right? And it's sort of this, right, because it's all the unanswered
Ambiguous.
questions, right? That creep us out the most. And I love the visual of like, yeah, like the black ick, but then also sort of the flaming eyes, right? I think
Right.
is a really cool, like just the way that they're described, especially in like the dark of night. It's just like really creepy. And like if I were to look out my window and see that, like that would give me nightmares.
Yeah. I was really just trying to push, like, some fun visuals that would hopefully, like, people would remember. Not necessarily, like, anything tied particular to the story, but just something fun, like, and you mentioned it too, like, you have horror movies like Scream, where you know that one of these main characters is the killer, and it's more of a mystery and a fun whodunit
Hmm.
than it is, like, Nightmare on Elm Street. You know who it is, you know what he's doing, but you don't necessarily know how he does it until you watch, like, the 5th one, and then they're just like, "Oh, yeah, he came back to," like, they over explain it, and I think that's, like, the problem with a lot of
Yeah.
horror movies these days is the audience feels entitled to have that explanation, to have all the answers, and I think not knowing is a lot scarier. Like, Halloween, Michael Myers is a lot scarier when you realize there is no reason for why he's doing this. He's just crazy.
Yeah.
No, he's not Carrie or, what's her name? Strode,
Oh, Laurie Strode.
he's not Laurie Strode's brother. Like, all these, like, weird, avenues that the later movies try to do to explain because they feel like they have
Well,
to do that.
Thorn, right? Or like Rob Zombie wants to make him a traumatized child, right? It's like you don't really need to ground it in any, whether supernatural or reality. It's just sort of the unknown. Like horror is best with like I think like I love dream logic with
Yeah,
horror, right? And sort of just because we can't know everything,
right.
right?
And I think if you're telling these stories, which Terror Valley is always gonna be, like, centered on, your main focus kid character, the kid wouldn't know what the hell's going on. If this
Hmm.
thing's crashing through your bathroom door, all you know is, "I gotta get out of here." Not, okay, well, why is he doing that? No.
Right.
If there's something you can kinda allude to, I think it's fine, but, like, they do, like, prequel series, like, they're doing, a Camp Blood, Friday the 13th, prequel series of Jason Voorhees growing up, and I'm like, what's that gonna add? Like, that's you're taking away the fun unknown of everything,
Yeah. To
like,
be fair though, I do love Bates Motel.
okay,
So,
yeah.
and I
But
think,
Norman Bates isn't like some mysterious character. You know everything that's kinda happened to him, so it's more interesting to see that because it's
yeah,
there. It's present in the book and in the movie
fair.
than, the second movie, Friday the 13th, you have Jason coming back from elsewhere, like, "Oh, he is alive," and then the third one's like, "Yeah, he's been living out in the forest for who knows how many years," and then by the 8th one, you're like, "Yeah, we don't really know, he's just back to life. He's in Manhattan now, he's having a blast."
Listen, it was the lightning rod that brought him back, all right?
Yeah, number 7, yeah, I know. Damn
But
Tommy Jarvis.
oh, man. But, no, but yeah, it's when you try to explain too much, it sort of takes away the fright. And I think especially well, I was thinking with Remy, right? Like, she doesn't really know how or the why, but she's a smart kid. And,
Mhm.
and and I love sort of in the culmination of the battle at the end in the dojo where she just sort of like, you know, she just figures out that the headbands are involved, and she's like, I think this is sort of I don't know for sure, but I'm going to try it. And she snatches the headband, and that tends to sort of sever the link, right?
Mhm. And I think that goes for a lot of people, like, don't give up. Try
Mhm.
try that last ditch effort, otherwise you're gonna become a zombie. Just how things happen.
Yeah. But that was I was saying in the but without getting into the spoilers in the first part, it was like I love
Mhm.
that moment of Sensei Roberts saying like, no, you're the one that has to do this. This is like this is your journey, your growth. Here's your black belt. I've taught you all I know. You saw, you finish this battle.
Yeah, it's a passing of the torch. It's
Yeah.
From sensei to student who is now able to take that learning and hopefully apply it.
In this case, she does.
What? Yeah,
In this case, she applies what she knows, right?
I'm gonna think about it tonight of what would have happened had she not. What would happen to Sensei Roberts? Where would that go? Nah.
It's an Elseworld sort of story.
Yeah.
Yeah, the multiverse of You're Not My Sensei.
Valley.
The what ifs.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, was there any sort of other elements that, like, anything that surprised you while you were writing this?
I like Chuck a lot more than I thought I would, and when I went back through and revised everything before I handed it off to my editor, Lauren, my wife, I really was like, dang, this is a cool character. Like, you hate him. He is annoying, but you can't help but also love him. And so by the end of this book, like, I think he's like, one of his last lines is like, I'm glad my Gam Gam or something isn't around to see what you've done to her house, like, just it's such a fun, like, sigh of relief character that I think wouldn't make the book work without. And as much as I like Remy, the character, as much as I like all of the other supporting characters, I really think you needed that Chuck character. And I didn't know that until I got into it more, until I got, into sort of the end game of it all. And what was really nice is when I went back through it, the first chapter like lays all that out. Like, everything in my life started going wrong the moment I met Chuck, but also like everything had to happen the way it did, and Chuck was there to kind of counterbalance it. Which I was really surprised by, because I went into it thinking, yeah, Remy's cool. Remy's could be like the best character, and she is. Don't get me wrong, but like Chuck just complements it so well.
Yeah.
Even talking about like doing anything else like with just Chuck just doesn't kind of feel right either. Like, he needs a balance as well. So
yeah, Remy's like your brains and bronze of the book. Chuck's like your heart, right? It's sort of like they all work well together, and he adds the stakes, right? You want her to save him, and then be friends at the end.
Yeah, and it was so different too. Like, going from the first book with Freddy, and you have to have Freddy juggle all of these qualities, otherwise you're not going to like your main character, which is a huge problem if you have a whole book dedicated to the one person and you can't stand them. So Freddy, I had to juggle a lot more to kind of balance that. But with Remy, I could make her more blunt. I could make her more, like, she's very, she says what she means. And, you can kind of get away with that more if you have other characters to pocket that, or you can kind of see how she sort of took on her personality after like Sensei Roberts, and then after she met Principal Cope, she's kind of becomes a little bit lighter, a little less tomboyish, and just fun little details like that was really interesting and fun as I went through it.
Well, it's relatable, I think, as kids, right? We sort of take on a little bit of the adults in our lives in some way, just in general, because we're at that age, right? We're looking for role models.
Hopefully not Mr. Flum.
Oh, no. Oh, when she laid him out, that 5 at the end when he was donezo, that made me happy.
Did you call the toupee thing, or did that come as a surprise?
That did come as a surprise, that it was like sort of shielding the because I'm like, we all had that teacher with the crappy toupee. Like, I was just like, okay, it's a funny little sort of character detail. I was like, yeah, he's fake. He's putting on this act. Of course, he has a toupee. He's got like self-esteem issues that he's making up for. So I wasn't even thinking of it that way. So yes, it did actually surprise me.
Okay, cool. Because I realized I was like, I have to talk about it almost every time I bring him up. Otherwise, the reveal's not going to make a whole lot of sense. So hopefully it's not too obvious when it happens.
I think it was like just the right amount because really it felt like you were just poking fun at him, right?
And
It's
I
like,
was.
yeah. So it kind of came off like it was just like, okay, here's the kind of the doofy guy who's trying too hard.
Mm-hmm. I did another interview with another individual who talked about like the way the characters are described and made me kind of realize I do something that I don't think a lot of others do, that I'm not really big on like prose and like explaining everything that's going on. Like they walk into a room, I'm not going to describe every little, minute detail. Um, and I do that a lot with my characters. And he made me realize that I only really described two characters, and then the rest is like context. So like Mr. Flum and his hair, and then like the lead Solar Strike Karate Kid, the one on the cover, and his dark hair, because I had to lead that in towards the end when all the kids are free, and they go off to wherever the hell they're going. So I don't know. Can I ask you like a personal question?
Sure.
In your mind, what did like Remy and Chuck, like what do these characters look like to you? Because I don't really describe them, and I just now realize that this is such a fun question to somebody who has read it.
Oh yeah. Who do you put in? So I pictured Remy sort of as a black woman.
Okay,
Yeah,
nice.
I just sort of like I don't know what it was. I think it just sort of I don't know why. And again, I don't know why. Uh, just her parents, her and her dad, just sort of like, and I pictured them as a black family.
Okay.
Chuck, I sort of just pictured as almost like this dopey, like Ron Weasley esque kind of character.
Sure.
Sensei Roberts. I don't know, I think I just pictured him with like dark hair. I don't know. Sometimes it was more of like a vague image.
Mm-hmm.
Principal Cope. Kind of pictured her sort of maybe just because all right, this was kind of closer to like my favorite, like my fifth grade teacher, kind of in a way.
Yeah.
Just because she just seemed really sort of heartfelt and like just a sweet person. Like I'm like, okay, I just put like a good kind of like experience that I had, and so I sort of just thought of my fifth grade teacher. Who am I missing?
I mean, you got the other Sensei, you got pretty much it. But no, that's what I'm talking about. Like that's so cool because everybody I've asked that now has a different response, and they're all correct because that's how you interpret it. Those are the characters for you. And I just realized like by the time I finished this book and people were able to read it and kind of give me feedback, that that's something that I think a lot of kids will enjoy because they're not super constrained. Like reading a Harry Potter, you have the movie. So I have a coworker who has a daughter whose name is Annie, who is 8 years old, who's reading those books right now. And she refuses to watch the movie because she does not want Daniel Radcliffe's face in her head when she's reading it. And I love that. Because you can have just any character and anybody can be anything that you need it to be or want it to be. And that's fun. I'm gonna
just keep asking people. I'm very curious what other people say. What else have you heard?
Well, the last guy said that in the last book, one of Freddy's friends, he was like, one of his friends was black, right? And I was like, oh, this one? And he was like, no, it was a different one. And I was like, interesting, because in my head, I'm not going to give up exactly what I've pictured as I write it, but I had an idea that this character was who he was describing, but he was thinking of a different one. And I'm like, that's great. That works. I'm not actively, trying to cast the perfect, image so that, this kid, if it gets made into a movie or something, is just like reading it and be like, that's me. Because then you run into the risk of like going back to Harry Potter and they cast Emma Watson as Hermione, and then years later, to be more inclusive, J.K. Rowling's like, yeah, I Hermione has always been black. And then you're like, oh, really? And you go back and you read the first description of bushy hair and buck teeth, and you're like, ooh, maybe keep that one in the drafts. Like, I think that there's so much that you can do without pushing
Yeah.
so much of that in there.
I like Broadway casting, right? Which is
Yeah.
sort of like race blind, sort of
Mhm.
colorblind casting. Because the idea is unless it's a story that's specifically around a culture,
Right.
you really anyone could play the role. And I think you nailed it. Sort of any kid can read these stories and see themselves in these roles.
Mhm.
And that just sort of plays well because like ideally kids in all parts of the country are going to be reading this. Maybe kids in other countries will be reading this, right? Like it'll be
I
wonderful, right?
cannot
So like
wait for the Japanese Terror Valley editions.
oh man, you might, yeah, I don't know, you might have some karate critiques from like the
You're not
origins.
my teacher. What does this mean? Yeah.
I love it. But yeah, any other sort of story beats should we focus on? Or characters? Did we sort of miss any characters?
No, we hit on all the big ones. I mean, Howie's really the only one, and that was a funny character because he's just a stereotypical bully, and his
Mhm.
name changed like 5 times when I was writing this, and I would like pick it up again, and I would be like, "Oh yeah, Grady. Wait a minute, that's not his name. What is? Oh, oh," and that's how interchangeable it was.
Yeah.
But
Howie was just the bulliest of names that you thought of in that moment.
Howie just sounded fun to like punch in the face. Just
Yeah.
he just sounded like that guy. Howie.
Howie.
Yeah. um,
Yeah.
no, that's pretty much it. I really like all the main characters in this. I think they worked well together, and I hope someday I can bring them back and do some more with them. Um, maybe they'll help out Chuck. Maybe Chuck's on his own. Who
Mhm.
knows? We'll have
Well,
to.
we could talk more, but I could definitely see it. My
Mhm,
this is just me sort of,
mhm.
speculating, right?
Okay.
And as a fan, right? I could see it sort of being like, okay, so this is Remy's introduction. Chuck is sort of going to have his like moment to sort of grow without Remy. And then I could see them maybe coming together for a finale, right? I could sort of see it being like individual stories and then the final showdown.
You're very close. I think I'm going to add another book in there. I think it's going to be 4 total, but more
Interesting.
on that later.
More on that later. Okay, but I was close. Okay, cool, fun.
Yeah,
I'll take the half credit.
cool, cool. Oh man.
Well, this has been such a blast. I had so much fun reading this, Squall. Like I continue to be so floored and impressed with your work. Um, it's just so exciting to read what you're doing and speculate what comes next. I can't wait for Camp Blood or Welcome to Camp. What's it called again?
This way to Camp
This
Blood.
way to Camp Blood.
I think the
Okay,
subtitle is going to be just follow the blood trail. Ah. I'm
fun. Make it
spitballing.
as hokey and
That's
schlocky as you can.
that's what I'm planning. I think I'm going to have a lot of fun because my personal background was in like film and everything like that. So there's a lot that I can do to poke at that hopefully people on the production side of stuff might even pick it up and laugh at it.
So, from my onset nightmares from when I was doing film stuff, you have
Mhm.
to have a character who gets their ankles hit by a C stand.
Yeah, yeah, that could be good. I was thinking of having like something disastrous happen with like an Apple box. Um,
Perfect.
but again, I'm just spitballing here. So if you have any fun ideas, you can talk to me after this, and maybe I'll add them in.
Oh yeah. So once again, I mean, this was the spoiler chat, so hopefully everyone has read it. But if for some reason they want to be spoiled before reading, where can they go and find Terror Valley? You're not my sensei.
TerrorValley.com has everything you need from book descriptions to things potentially in the future for teachers and parents, as well as links to buy all of the books and all the upcoming ones. The third one will be coming out in February, so hopefully, we can do another one of these in a couple months.
Hell yeah. We
But
just have to have you come back and do your influential horror episode.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, we can do a lot of that during February. Who knows?
Oh yeah.
So You can also follow us over on Twitter. I'm at Squall Charlson, one word. Or you can also follow the Terror Valley Twitter, Terror Valley Books, which is BKS, just because, character count. Elon. That's it. That's all. That's where I am. Amazon and there, baby. That's
And
it.
that's all, folks. Well, as long as you get your hands on it, that's all that matters, right?
Right. And I will say one last thing,
Sure.
because it's going to be going on when this comes out. For everybody who buys one of the books, the first one or the second one, till the end of the year, I'm going to be matching every single book bought to donate to local libraries and schools here in the Kansas City area. So your purchase of one of these books will help get it into the hands of other kids and other people here in the area, and hopefully elsewhere as we continue to go.
I think that's amazing. Amazing work that you're doing, Squall, on the page and off the page.
I'm just take like a box of these and just like hide them in like those little libraries that people have everywhere outside of their houses. Some guerrilla marketing.
It's partial self-promotion, but also like literacy for kids is important, right? So donating books and getting kids to read and get excited about reading is like, I'm all for that. I think that's amazing.
This one's signed. What the heck?
It's signed. It's got his website. There's a business card in here.
Is this a headshot?
Well, this has been a blast. Thank you again, Squall. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks as always for having me on.
And thank you everyone for watching Voices from the Mausoleum. We will catch you next time.